Wilhelt is proving to be a very popular commander from the new precon series on Innistrad, so I thought I'd build a new deck for you all and go over some of the upgrades that I've made. Going to keep referring to my phone here because I've got the deck list on here, so apologies for not looking at you the whole time. But we'll go through some of the value creatures that don't fit in any other particular slot. So first off with that is Champion of the Perished is just going to get bigger as you play zombies. It does include zombie tokens, which is incredibly relevant in this tribe. Our first lord for the deck is Death Baron, included in the precon. Don't so much care about the +1/+1. The anthems are nice, especially when you've got a lot of tokens in play. It can really add up just the extra +1 damage. But this is really in here for the Death Touch because it kind of acts like an evasive maneuver. No one wants to block a Death Toucher unless it's with a Solemn or a commander that they don't mind recasting, but typically speaking, people won't want to throw things in the way of a Death Toucher, so Death Baron really good here. And one of my favourite pieces included is quite a new zombie. It's Diagraph Colossus, and this is just like a mini Grave Titan sort of. As much as you play zombies, that's as many zombies as you get out of it. They do come in tapped, but I mean, it's 3 mana. It can be a huge zombie if it's late in the game because it comes in with plus counters per zombie that's in your graveyard. This is really in here for the token generation. It's just incremental value, which is too good to not include for only 3 mana. Then speaking of evasive lords, like we just did with Death Baron, Lord of the Accursed is going to give all of our stuff Menace, I think it is. Yeah, all of our zombies have Menace for 2 and a tap, and this is obviously just a means of making our tokens and other creatures really difficult for our opponents to block. Another lord, pretty expensive one monetarily, but another one is Lord of the Undead. This is going to bring our zombies back from our graveyard to our hands, so not necessary for the deck, but it is really good if you can hold on to it without summoning sickness, obviously, until the end of your opponent's turn and the beginning of yours. You can just bring a zombie back to hand, and it's kind of like card advantage at that point. Then once again, referring back to Death Baron, we have Vizier of the Scorpion. This creates 2 zombies for only 3 mana, and one of the zombies comes in with Death Touch thanks to this Lord effect. It gives all of our tokens Death Touch, so once again a little bit of a Death Touch sub-theme, but it's just a means of getting our creatures through. Obviously we can't use the Death Touch to block with decayed creatures, but we'll create plenty of zombie tokens that don't have decayed, so it'll be really good for blocking as well as attacking. Cleaver Scab is yet another one that's only included in this precon. It's the only place to get it at the moment, and it just seems like a fun one to play with, to be honest. I don't think there's any kind of combo game-winning thing that we can do with it in this deck. It'd be good to copy lords and stuff like that over the course of a few turns, but it's really in here because it's a fun one. 3 tap and sack a zombie. Create 2 token copies of the zombie you sacrificed. So like I said, copying lords and things like that might be a really good means of pushing some extra damage through for this one. Speaking of lords, Undead Warchief is in the deck as well. This acts as a sort of mana rock as well. It makes our zombies cost 1 less. But if you don't like anthems in your decks, and some people don't because they don't deem them worthy of the mana cost just to get a +1/+1 buff, if you're not going to include anthems, I would definitely include Undead Warchief because it's +2/+1, and that +2 makes a world of difference. If you've got only 5 zombies in play, you've got an extra 10 power to play with there, so the +2/+1 is definitely relevant, and the reduction in cost of zombies is even better. So if you're only going to include 1 anthem in the deck, make it Undead Warchief. Grey Merchant of Asphodel in the 5 mana slot. It's Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is more focusing on the black side of things. I took out all the self-mill and stuff like that because it's not really how I wanted to build the deck. It's more a black zombie build with a splash of blue, so Grey Merchant of Asphodel, great include in this deck. Hordewing Scab included in the precon, only place you can get it, gives all your zombies flying. I was actually considering putting Wonder in this list when I first saw it, but then I saw the Hordewing Scab and that gives all your zombies flying, so better than Wonder. But if you do have some self-mill stuff in your deck, then maybe include Wonder as well, but Hordewing Scab is a dead cert. Forgot to mention there actually that it also has the looting effect, so that goes hand in hand with the whole Wonder thing and self-mill, so I'm not going to be using the whole self-mill strategy like I said, but this is really good card filtering as well. I'd run it for 5 mana just for the flying personally. Skipping over that 5 mana creature because I want to talk about it in a minute. Phyrexian Delver being the next one, and that is just a Reanimate on a stick. It is a 3/2 body, a zombie, reanimate something. Nothing more you can say about that really. Ravenous Rotbelly, another exclusive. This is a means of a one-sided board wipe. We do have Grave Pact in the deck as well, so we don't necessarily want to be wiping the board with Damnations and Toxic Deluges. We want to be forcing our opponent to sacrifice creatures so that we can get our zombie army through to them. Gravespawn Sovereign, not seeing too much excitement about this one. I'm pretty sure that this is the first time this has been reprinted, and I'm almost certain that it's the first time it's been reprinted with a new frame. I really like the new frames as opposed to the old ones, so whenever an old card like this gets printed into a new frame, I'm automatically excited about it. But yet another reanimation effect. Tap 5 untap zombies you control, put a creature from your graveyard into play. Can't say fairer than that. We are planning to make a bunch of zombie tokens, like I keep saying, so should be able to reanimate multiple things a turn, potentially. Noteworthy that you can do this at instant speed as well, so you can do it at the end of your opponent's turn, ready to attack on yours. And it can tap itself, so it sort of reads tap 4 untap zombies you control because it can tap itself, but not affected by summoning sickness, can tap itself, can do it at instant speed. It's a great reanimation thing, I think. Macaeus the Unhallowed, speaking of reanimation, don't have any humans in this list, of course. They are pretty much all zombies. Or tell a lie, we do have one human, but I'll go over that later. Macaeus the Unhallowed just goes well with our sacrifice shenanigans. We do have Gravecrawler in this list, and Phyrexian Altar I think I've already mentioned. But we want to sacrifice things and do some aristocrat stuff and get ETBs, all that type of thing. Macaeus the Unhallowed is good wrath protection as well, so a decent means of us keeping a board in play or a combo enabler. It's a really versatile card in this list. And now I'll go over that card that I said I didn't want to mention before. Noxious Ghoul, we have pretty much built the whole deck around. Noxious Ghoul is going to keep our opponent's creatures off the board. I said before that we want to keep our opponent's creatures off the board while keeping our board intact of creatures so that we can turn in sideways and try to deal combat damage. Combat damage is pretty difficult to get off without a bunch of haste, and we're not going to really have a bunch of haste going in a Dimir deck, so this is just going to help the chance along that we can carry on pinging our opponents for as many turns as possible. Noxious Ghoul is going to minus our opponent's creatures down so it can potentially get rid of Indestructible and stuff like that as well. Gets around Shroud, gets around Hexproof. So it's really worth building around it, I think. And the reason that I bring up building around it is because my favourite creature in all of Magic the Gathering is Grave Titan. And you would think that Grave Titan would go straight into this deck. And you could fit it in here, but it doesn't go well with Noxious Ghoul. I want all the creatures in my deck to be zombies, so I don't have to worry about getting another card to make them relevant to the deck. So Grave Titan didn't make the cut. I don't want it to die to Noxious Ghoul. So instead, I have replaced it with another one that is underplayed in my opinion in decks like this, Nooscraft Mob. Nooscraft Mob comes in with 5+ counters, and every time anyone, including you, casts a spell, a zombie falls out of this thing basically. Lose a plus counter, gain a 2/2 zombie. So you pretty much for 6 mana end up trading in your 5 power for 10 power across 5 bodies. Sort of like a Grave Titan, not quite, but it is a zombie so it won't die to the Noxious Ghoul. I think this is a great one. And this is part of one of those accidental combos that I spoke about before, but we'll go over combos later. Rothulk, a 5/5 with Menace, not the greatest body in the world, but it's really in here for the reanimation. The more opponents you have, the more bodies you get into play. It's just another reanimator effect, really. Going along with the little Death Touch sub-theme as well, we've got the Wand of Orcus. This gives Death Touch to all of our stuff during attacks and blocking, and it generates tokens as well. It does everything that we need it to do. Pretty expensive, but we've got a low curve deck here anyway, so don't really mind this one. The mana shouldn't put us off with something this powerful anyway, because it is a really, really good card. Empty the Lab, another one from the precon I decided to keep in. Sacrifice a bunch of zombie tokens, get a bunch of zombies straight out of your deck. I don't see what's not to like on this one. It's a good mana sink with something like Cabal Coffers as well. Rise of the Dreadmaw, just been printing in Kaldheim, a great means of generating a lot of zombie tokens. It has Foretell, so you can protect it in the exile zone, and it's only a single black. Cares about all non-token creatures that died, so someone wipes the board, you didn't have any creatures in play anyway, but a load of non-token creatures went down. You're going to get a lot of zombie tokens out of this for only 1 black mana at instant speed. And then at the higher end of the token strategy is Army of the Damned included in this one. This goes well with the self-mill strategy, so if you're looking to do that with your deck, you don't mind milling this because it does have flashback, although it costs a fortune. Army of the Damned is a great way to recover from a board wipe. It is very, very slow, but it's a great means of getting a lot of bodies into play. We'll move on to some enchantments now that care more about some token generation. So we've got Dreadhorde Invasion included in the deck. This is kind of like the zombie Bitter Blossom, not quite as good as Bitter Blossom of course, but Horde Wing Invasion is going to keep you in at least one zombie. It's noteworthy actually that if you have changeling creatures in your deck, they do count as armies, so you won't get another token on a changeling. It will put the plus counter onto the changeling creature and you won't get another zombie token if you're ever relying on that. It's just worth knowing about. Ghoulish Procession is another enchantment that I don't see many people talking about. Just have to read it to make sure that I get it right. Whenever one or more non-token creatures die, that is any non-token creature including yours, including your opponent's, create a 2/2 black zombie with Decayed. This ability only triggers once each turn unfortunately, but it is only 2 mana on an uncommon, so this is really worthwhile just having in play. It's the type of enchantment that no one's going to care enough about to remove, so it's just going to gain you incremental advantage over the course of the game. Your opponent's creatures are going to die, even if it's got nothing to do with you, so if you're just sitting back and getting decayed zombies every now and then, they're not even necessarily going to care about them because they're decayed and they're going to kill themselves anyway. But it's just a really good one for only 2 mana. You will get value out of it. Curse of the Relentless Dead. Lands matter, pretty popular now. If you're running against a meta that's pretty expensive and people run fetches and stuff like that, then you're just going to get a bunch of zombies out of this thing. Grave Pact, I briefly mentioned before, we do have sack outlets and stuff like that. Could definitely put the Erebos version of this in there as well. It isn't in here. I was trying to keep the curve as smooth as possible like I normally do. Like I said, could put the Erebos one in here, but just decided to plump for Grave Pact. And then the infamous Rooftop Storm, been reprinted into this precon, so you've already got it if you bought the precon. Can get plenty of infinites off with this, and worst case scenario, you've just got some zombies in your hand, you just throw them down for free. So speaking of combos, why don't we just go over them right now. The first one, elephant in the room that everyone knows about, it's Phyrexian Altar and Gravecrawler. For anyone who doesn't know, very quickly, if you've got a zombie in play, which you will in a zombie deck, you can sacrifice the Gravecrawler for a black and just keep replaying it infinitely, so you get infinite death triggers, infinite ETB triggers. Oh, it's worth noting that you can get infinite mana doing that as well. If you've got your commander in play, which is a zombie, along with the Gravecrawler, you can do that infinitely. You get a decayed zombie every time you do it, so then you can sacrifice those for the infinite mana. The infinite mana can go into X spells, it can go into, actually, the Relentless Dead. So Relentless Dead can, it's not necessarily a really powerful combo, but you can get all of your zombies back out onto the battlefield with the infinite mana. So just another means of reanimator for the deck. It is zombies, so we have to be able to do that. And next up with the combos, it's one that took people a little bit of time to catch on to, but I've seen a few other people mention this already, so you may already know about it. That is Poppet Stitcher from the new set. It can generate zombies when you cast instants or sorceries. We're likely going to have enough zombies to flip it round straight away. You have to have it survive until your next turn, and then during the upkeep, if you've got 3 or more tokens in play, transform it, and it is the transformed version that we want to get into. Noteworthy that this is the human I was referring to before, so you have to be very careful playing this out with the Noxious Ghoul in play. But it is the Poppet Factory that we're interested in. Creature tokens you control lose all abilities, including Decay, and have base power 3/3. So this is a combo enabler, of course, we're in the combo section. And if you can generate infinite zombie tokens from your commander or the Newscraft mob, something like that, they won't have any abilities, and you can sacrifice whatever you want pretty much and have it replaced with what would be decayed zombies, but instead are just 3/3 generic tokens. A little bit of a nombo with this is that our tokens can no longer have Death Touch or Flying, which are the main abilities that we would give them. Like I said, a little bit of a nombo, but if you're after comboing off, then you don't necessarily care about those keywords anyway. Another means of infinitely recasting things from your graveyard is a sack outlet, of course, and then the Rooftop Storm, and it is Liliana Untouched by Death. So she's got a -3 that allows you to recast zombies from your graveyard this turn, so you can infinitely sacrifice them and recast them for free if you've got the Rooftop Storm. And this gets you into those loops again that we were referring to. So what can you do with all of these loops? Well, we've got aristocrat effects in the deck, so we've got Diagraph Captain, Plague Belcher, and Vengeful Dead. These are going to ping our opponents every time we lose a creature, so if we can constantly kill off and replay our zombies infinitely, then we're going to drain our opponents out. We can put infinite tokens on the Crowded Crypt doing this as well, so at the end of our opponent's turn and the beginning of ours, we can sacrifice that, generate a bazillion zombies, and turn sideways for lethal. Also got a Chroma's Memorial in here as well for something similar, so we've got evasion, protection. We can take all of our zombies into the red zone and take a few opponents out that way as well. Another combo that goes with the whole Rooftop Storm thing is the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Just recast that for free over and over again. You have at least 2 devotion to black because of the Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and you're draining your opponents every time you do that. Another combo that I accidentally put in the deck along with the infinite recast thing is if we've got Newscraft Mob and Machias in play, which might occur on the back of a mass reanimation spell or something like that. We'll go over those in a minute. Newscraft Mob and Machias will obviously see each other, and every time we cast a spell, which we are doing with the infinite recast from the zombies, then Newscraft Mob will lose power, it will generate a token, and eventually it will have its last counter removed. The Machias will see that and bring it back in with Undying, and we carry on recasting the zombies and getting infinite tokens at that point, as well as infinite deaths and unearths for the Newscraft Mob. Obviously we can do that with our commander as well, but the Newscraft Mob zombies are just regular 2/2s as opposed to the decayed zombies that our commander creates. I just mentioned Living Death, so now is a good time to go over the mass reanimation, I think. Living Death is a really good one. It's mainly in here for a weird type of removal, to be honest. I included it over things like Patriarch's Bidding and the new one from Kaldheim that I can never remember the name of, the Foretell one. Included Living Death in here instead because it can be a board wipe for your opponents. Assuming that they're not running Reanimator decks themselves, you can assume that they're not going to have too many creatures that you're going to worry about in the bin. So you gain all of your zombies back because they've wiped your board, and they hopefully get a few dorks and bits like that. You're obviously only going to cast this if you're going to gain the benefit from it. So it does act like a board wipe and reanimator spell in one package. Another one that can do exactly the same thing, included in the precon, is Zombie Apocalypse. What's likely to happen with this deck is that you are going to reanimate all of your zombies, of course, and then your opponents will have a few bits of humans in play, and you'll exile those, so things like Eternal Witness and cards like that. They're not necessarily running a human tribal list where you can blow them out entirely, but they'll just so happen to be running good creatures that just so happen to be humans, so you'll get a little bit of removal there, but it's mainly for the reanimator on zombies, of course. Talking about Living Death and Zombie Apocalypse takes me over to Necrotic Hex. This is another kind of sort of board wipe, hopefully. Hopefully your opponents aren't going completely wide on you and generating a bunch of tokens themselves. Necrotic Hex will make your opponents, or actually each player, sacrifice 6 creatures and you get 6 tapped zombies. So you would assume you would do this when you hardly have any creatures in play. That's when you typically cast board wipes, and you will end up with some creatures to swing in with and buff maybe. So obviously that sets you up for the next turn. Ghoul's Night Out is another one that's included in the precon, so you already have it, and for only 5 mana you get 4 creatures. They have decayed, but there's nothing to say that you need to use them as attackers or blockers. They can just sit there and act as some kind of weird removal for your opponents. They can't reanimate it out of the graveyard because you've already done that for them very kindly. And this will give you things like ETBs and static abilities, world abilities, stuff like that. Really, really good card, and I expect it to see play outside of Reanimator and Zombie decks. And that can briefly take us over to some removal for the list. There isn't too much removal, but it is worth mentioning. Feed the Swarm should go in any non-white, non-green deck, and it is included in the precon, so no excuses not to run it here. Blows up an enchantment or a creature, one of the few means of dealing with enchantments for the Dimir decks, so definitely worth an include. And then as another piece of spot removal, we've got Baleful Mastery as well. Can also cast it for 2 mana, or you can just cast it for the full cost and not give any of your opponents any kind of card draw. But it's exile on a creature or planeswalker at instant speed, and that modal effect on the mana cost can be really useful. Another similar effect to this is Swift End on the Murderous Rider. I've seen people recommend Hero's Downfall in this deck, and I mean, I think Murderous Rider and Swift End are an auto-include. The Murderous Rider is a zombie knight, so for the cost of the Hero's Downfall, you might as well get a zombie out of the deal, whether it's a zombie deck or not. With combos and removal out of the way, we'll move on to card draw. We've got some zombies that have us lose a life and draw a card every time one of our creatures goes down. Those cards are Undead Augur and Midnight Reaper. Have to be careful with these because we do lose the life, and if we're going infinite, then we will obviously lose the game to going down to 0 life, but if we're going infinite like that, we've got a sack outlet anyway, so we can just sacrifice them when we're sick of losing life and drawing cards. Corpse Augur is another one that is likely just going to be whenever it dies, we draw cards with it. It is noteworthy that we could technically go infinite with this as well, although we would lose life every time again, so drawing only 1 or 2 cards with this a few times could be enough to get us back in the game. Another exclusive one that we are keeping in the deck is the Drown in Dreams. Now, this is supposed to be for the self-mill strategy, I think, but it is twice X target player mills a card, so we could draw 10 cards and our opponent could mill 20. We could do the infinite mana into X, like I said before, so we could draw, I don't know, 45 cards and our opponent could mill 90, and then we could hopefully combo off from there, assuming that we've got the infinite mana. We could certainly do that. Pact of the Serpent is great in any black tribal deck. This actually came from the Lathril precon, and this just cares about the number of any one tribe that you have in play, so obviously you would name zombie 99% of the time here. Windfall, another excellent one in pretty much all blue decks. You play it to your advantage, so if you're not really liking the cards that are in your hand, or you just don't mind milling them, discarding them, you've got Gravecrawler in hand for instance, or you're hoping to get into some mass reanimation to save yourself, then Windfall is going to top up your hand as well as everyone else's, and it's going to dump some stuff into your graveyard, which could be to your advantage. Distant Melody already included in the deck. You're hoping to have a lot of zombies in play, so 4 mana, it's a sorcery. Could replace this with something like Fact or Fiction, but the upside on Distant Melody is huge. The downside is absolutely abysmal as well though, so it's a risky one to play, but the upside is massive for only 4 mana. And then last in the card draw section, I think is my favourite Planeswalker ever printed. I think she's knocked Elspeth Sun's Champion off the top spot here, because the static ability is whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. That includes tokens, incredibly. So goes with the whole infinite strategy before, but it's even incredible without that. You can block for days and draw cards, punish your opponents for blocking your creatures and killing them in combat. There's all kinds of shenanigans that this adds to the table. Makes it really difficult for your opponents. Huge upside for you. Punishes them for board wipes. It's just incredible, as well as making tokens itself and controlling the board with its sacrifice minus ability. So with that, we'll go over the mana. There's nothing all that interesting really. There's Urborg and Cabal Coffers to generate a bunch of mana, auto include in any black deck. Ancient Tomb is a means of ramping on a land. We've got Lityara Mirror Lake is a really good reanimator spell on a tap land. I do like to try and not run as many tap lands as possible, but this is a really good one, so I did include it. Myriad Landscape for a bit of ramp again. Unholy Grotto is a noteworthy one. Put a zombie from your graveyard on top of your library, so if you're really desperate to grab a zombie back, then you can with that. You can activate it at instant speed. And then as far as rocks go, again, nothing too incredible. Sol Ring, Arcane Signet, Dimir Signet, Mind Stone, Talisman of Dominance, Commander Sphere, a little bit of card draw in Mind Stone and Commander Sphere. Crowded Crypt to get a bunch of zombies into play, included in the precon. And that is about it, so hopefully you all enjoyed this precon upgrade video. Be sure to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this, and I will be playing the Wilhelt video in paper because it's not available on Magic Online, so hopefully you're all looking forward to the paper gameplay for the first time ever on the channel. I'm tribalkai on the eedi-H channel. Thank you for watching.